trillions of dollars in global capital are just sitting there, literally locked out of the world's fastest growing economies. And why? Because the legacy financial plumbing is completely broken. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a visionary briefing tailored specifically for those of you allocating capital on a massive global scale. We're looking at the architecture of a hyper-scalable, decentralized financial infrastructure known as the unified Sigma platform. Look, this isn't about just tweaking existing banking models. We're talking about completely re-architecting global liquidity from the ground up to serve frontier markets, connecting your institutional capital directly to high-growth opportunities.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our agenda for today. First, the legacy banking bottleneck. Second, architecting the Sigma platform. Third, the entrepreneur liquidity loop. Fourth, the POISE ethical framework. And finally, igniting global capital formation.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the legacy banking bottleneck and its structural failure.
So to really grasp the sheer scale of the solution we're deploying here, we have to look at the macro problem that's starving emerging economies of capital today. Think about legacy correspondent banking. It operates like a completely congested single-lane dirt road leading to a manual toll booth. A transaction literally has to bounce between multiple intermediary banks, clearinghouses, and local brokers before it ever reaches its destination. And every single stop, it adds a fee, it adds time, and quite frankly, it adds a point of failure. Sovereign Edge Compute replaces that entirely. It's the equivalent of a multi-lane automated fiber optic highway. Instead of relying on a clunky central bank server in New York or London to verify a transaction taking place in Nairobi or Bogota, the processing power is totally distributed. It executes right at the edge of the network. That means verification happens securely and instantly on the local devices themselves. We are swapping out an outdated exclusionary choke point for a model built for absolute frictionless scale.
Moving right along to Section 2, architecting the Sigma platform, the execution engine.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the synthesis. Quote, we are synthesizing our AI OS, RWA bridge, and Alcoin engine into a single runtime environment designed specifically for unbanked, high-growth global corridors. Think of a unified runtime environment kind of like a fully self-contained digital ecosystem. It doesn't need to ask permission from an outside server, and it definitely doesn't rely on a patchwork of different software companies to actually function. It's a completely self-sufficient engine, running smoothly to serve areas of the world that traditional financial institutions just cannot reach profitably.
Let's strip away the jargon for a second and systematically break down the actual components of this environment. First up, the AI operating system. This is basically the brain orchestrating the network. It's automatically optimizing transaction routes and ensuring security protocols are met instantly, with zero human delay. Second is the real-world asset, or RWA bridge. This one is absolutely vital. It allows users to take a physical asset, like a warehouse, a fleet of delivery vehicles, or even an agricultural yield, and represent it digitally on the network as a secure, tradable fraction. Third, we have the Alcoin economic engine. This is the underlying mechanism handling the exchange of value. It completely bypasses the friction of converting local frontier currencies into US dollars and back again. It establishes a fluid, standardized means of trade right across borders. And finally, ubiquitous edge devices. Honestly, this is where the true revolution happens. We're talking about standard smartphones, local commercial routers, independent network nodes. By utilizing the devices people literally already have in their pockets, the network completely bypasses the need to build massive billion-dollar server farms in developing regions. It yanks the processing power right out of closed data centers and pushes it directly to the users.
Which brings us to Section 3, the entrepreneur liquidity loop, immediate settlement. So the crucial point is how this actually plays out on the ground. For you Tier 1 capital allocators watching, let's look at exactly how this advanced architecture translates into practical, everyday use. Picture a mid-sized coffee cooperative down in Colombia, and they're looking to expand operations with a new commercial roaster. Now, in the legacy system, securing that loan could take months of paperwork, exorbitant local interest rates, and crippling intermediary fees. It's a nightmare. But under the Sigma platform, the loop is radically different. Step 1, the cooperative accesses the decentralized marketplace via a lightweight dApp. And a dApp is just a decentralized application. It looks and feels exactly like a regular app on a smartphone, but it runs directly on our secure blockchain network instead of some centralized corporate server. Step 2, using that RWA bridge we talked about, they tokenize their physical collateral. They digitally lock in the value of their upcoming coffee yield or existing machinery, proving their ownership cryptographically. And step 3, they receive immediate peer-to-peer liquidity. An institutional investor sitting in London or Singapore can fund that specific collateralized opportunity instantly. No local bank branches, no correspondent delays. The cooperative gets the capital to buy their roaster today, and the investor gets direct exposure to a high-growth asset. It's a total win-win.
Let's move to Section 4, the POISE ethical framework, the institutional moat.
Of course, if you're an infrastructure moving capital at this kind of velocity, you need absolute security. For institutional participants, we know compliance is paramount, and this brings us to poising. This is our operational framework, ensuring self-sovereignty, democratize access, and maximize cross-border efficiency. But how does it actually do that? Well, instead of relying on a central authority or some local auditor in a foreign jurisdiction to prevent fraud, Poise embeds compliance directly into the code itself. Smart contracts auto-execute regulatory requirements. That means anti-money laundering and know-your-customer protocols are verified algorithmically, right at the protocol layer, before a transaction can even clear. You aren't trusting a local middleman to act ethically. You are trusting immutable mathematics. This framework acts as the absolute guarantee of compliance and security, forming a true institutional moat around the entire ecosystem.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final segment, Section 5, Igniting Global Capital Formation, the Democratic Engine.
The Sigma platform is actively bridging elite high-net-worth individual liquidity with localized real-world assets to build a fully democratic liquidity engine. For the institutional viewers watching this explainer right now, this speaks directly to you. We're not just talking about a tech upgrade here. This is the key to unlocking a previously inaccessible multi-trillion-dollar asset class. This platform is the hyper-scalable bridge connecting your capital directly to the high-growth, tokenized assets in frontier markets. It entirely disintermediated the legacy bottlenecks that made these global corridors way too expensive to navigate in the past.
As the source material definitively states, we have laid the code, we have mapped the compliance, we have built the economic mechanics of the altcoin. But the ultimate victory of the unified Sigma platform does not sit in a closed data center. It lives in the palm of a hand. I really want you to pause and consider the magnitude of that for a moment. By decentralizing Wall Street-level processing power and pushing it down to a basic smartphone, we are fundamentally democratizing the entire global financial system. A solo fractional investor in an emerging market now wields the equivalent clearing authority of a traditional legacy brokerage. It's absolutely wild to think about.
The rails are live. The parameters are set. The future of disintermediated finance is no longer theoretical. It's executing right now, at the edge. We are standing at a historic inflection point in global capital formation. So the only real question left to ask yourself is this: where will your capital sit?